In a small village nestled among rolling hills lived a couple named Neka and Chika. They were a well-loved pair known for their kindness and generosity. For years, they tried to start a family, but were met with heartbreak after heartbreak. Finally, after 5 years of longing, they were blessed with 4 strong, healthy sons. These boys were the pride of Neka and Chika's lives, bringing them immense joy and fulfillment. However, despite this happiness, Neka felt a void in her heart. She longed for a daughter. Neka often wandered through the village market, admiring the colorful dresses and delicate accessories meant for little girls. She would imagine how beautiful her daughter would look in them. The thought of raising a daughter, teaching her the ways of womanhood, and sharing a special bond filled Neka's heart with an unshakable desire. Every night she prayed fervently, asking for a daughter to complete their family. Chika, noticing his wife's sadness, tried to console her. "We are blessed with 4 wonderful sons," he would say. "We should be grateful for what we have." But Neka's heart was set on having a daughter. She couldn't shake the feeling that their family was incomplete without a little girl. One day, Neka's prayers were finally answered. She discovered she was pregnant again, and she was overjoyed. Throughout her pregnancy, she prayed that the child she was carrying would be a girl. When the time came, Neka gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Her joy knew no bounds. She named her daughter Chiamaka, meaning God is good, but she affectionately called her Chichi. Neka lavished Chichi with all the love and attention she had been saving for a daughter, buying her the finest clothes and giving her the best care. However, as Chichi grew older, Neka began to notice something troubling. By the time Chichi was 3, she still hadn't taken her first steps. Neka watched anxiously as the months passed, hoping that her daughter would eventually walk. But Chichi remained unable to stand on her own. Neka's initial concern turned to deep worry. She consulted local healers and sought the advice of elders, but no one could provide an explanation or solution. As time went on, the villagers began to notice Chichi's condition. Gossip spread quickly in the small community. People began to whisper behind Neka's back, calling her daughter the crippled child, and referring to Neka as the mother of the lame. The once joyful pride Neka felt in having a daughter turned into a source of shame. The villagers' cruel remarks cut deep, and Neka's heart broke as she saw her beloved daughter become the subject of ridicule. The pressure from the community became unbearable. Neka began to resent the very prayer she had once fervently made. Her joy at having a daughter was overshadowed by the shame she felt. Even Chika, who had always been supportive, started to distance himself from Chichi. He blamed Neka for insisting on having more children. "If you had been satisfied with our sons," he said bitterly, "we wouldn't be dealing with this embarrassment now." Over time, Neka's resentment grew. She began to withdraw from Chichi, no longer giving her the love and attention she once had. She secretly wished that Chichi would somehow disappear from their lives, thinking that it would be easier to live without the constant reminder of her mistake. Chichi's brothers, once proud of their little sister, started to avoid her as well, embarrassed by the way people in the village referred to their family as the crippled family. Finally, Chika and Neka made a drastic decision. One night, while Chichi was fast asleep, they packed their belongings, gathered their sons, and quietly left the village. They couldn't bear the shame any longer and decided to start anew in a distant town where no one knew them. They left without a word, abandoning Chichi in the house they had called home for years. When Chichi awoke the next morning, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. The house was eerily quiet. She crawled to her parents' room, hoping to find her mother, but the room was empty. She called out, her voice echoing through the empty house, but there was no answer. Day after day, Chichi waited, hoping her family would return, but no one came. She was heartbroken and alone, abandoned by the very people who were supposed to love and protect her. In her loneliness and despair, Chichi found solace in singing. It started as a way to comfort herself, a means of expressing the pain she couldn't put into words. But as she sang, something miraculous happened. Her voice, though never heard before, was beautiful, pure, and hauntingly melodic. It carried through the air, reaching the ears of villagers passing by. Curious about the source of the singing, people began to gather outside Chi-Chi's house. They were astonished to find that the beautiful voice belonged to the little girl they had once ridiculed. The villagers, moved by her talent, brought her food and gifts, encouraging her to continue singing. What was once a painful existence began to change as Chi-Chi's singing drew people to her. Before long, Chi-Chi became known throughout the village for her enchanting voice. She was invited to sing at various events, and her performances became a highlight for the community. Singing provided Chi-Chi not only with an income, but also with a newfound sense of purpose. It was her way of surviving and thriving despite the odds. One day, a wealthy merchant named Mr. Ifeanyi passed through the village on a business trip. As he walked through the marketplace, he heard Chi-Chi singing under a large tree. Captivated by her voice, he approached her. But when she didn't get up to greet him, he realized that she couldn't walk. Mr. Ifeanyi was struck by the sight of this beautiful young girl with such a powerful voice, but unable to stand on her own. Touched by her plight, Mr. Ifeanyi took Chi-Chi to the village chief, explaining that he knew a healer in his town who might be able to help her walk again. The chief, aware of Chi-Chi's situation, agreed to let her go with the merchant. Mr. Ifeanyi took Chi-Chi to his hometown, where a renowned herbalist treated her. After weeks of care, Chi-Chi began to walk for the first time in her life. The merchant and his wife, who had only one son named Chinedu, immediately took Chi-Chi into their hearts. They had always wanted a daughter and saw in Chi-Chi the child they had longed for. They treated her with the love and care she had never truly known, nursing her back to full health. When they asked her to stay with them as part of their family, Chi-Chi agreed, feeling a deep gratitude and love for the people who had shown her such kindness. With her new family, Chi-Chi thrived. She and Chinedu grew up together, learning the family business side by side. Chi-Chi's talent for singing, combined with her sharp mind, made her an asset in the market. She would sing about the products they were selling, drawing customers to their stall. Her songs became so popular that people would flock to their shop just to hear her sing, and as a result, their business flourished. Chi-Chi and Chinedu soon became known as the most successful traders in the market. Their bond grew stronger over time, not just as business partners, but as close friends. They were inseparable, working together every day and dreaming of expanding their business even further. Among the crowd that often gathered to hear Chi-Chi sing were two young boys who seemed particularly captivated by her voice. They would come every day, but they never bought anything. Chi-Chi noticed them and invited them closer, telling them they were welcome to stay, even if they couldn't afford to buy anything. The boys, grateful for her kindness, became regulars at the stall and eventually started helping out. But one day, the boys stopped coming. Chi-Chi missed their presence and wondered why they had disappeared. A few days later, a woman arrived at the stall, her face etched with worry. She tearfully explained that her two sons were gravely ill and she didn't have the money to pay for their treatment. As the woman spoke, Chi-Chi felt a strange familiarity in her voice, but she couldn't quite place it. Moved by the woman's plea, Chi-Chi gave her the money she needed. But that night, Chi-Chi couldn't sleep. Memories of her childhood flooded back, and she realized why the woman's voice had seemed so familiar. It was her mother. The next day, the woman returned to the meat stall to thank Chi-Chi and Chinedu for their help. As the woman expressed her gratitude, Chinedu noticed that Chi-Chi was unusually quiet. He asked the woman if she didn't recognize Chi-Chi, but the woman, confused, said she didn't. Suddenly, Chi-Chi's emotions overwhelmed her, and she shouted, "You abandoned me when I was just a little girl because I couldn't walk. You left me to die in that house, and now you come to me for help? How can you not recognize your own daughter, mother?" The woman, stunned, fell to her knees and began to weep. She begged Chi-Chi for forgiveness, confessing her deep regret for abandoning her. She had never forgiven herself for leaving her daughter behind and had spent years searching for her, hoping for a chance to make amends. But Chi-Chi, still hurt by the betrayal, told her mother to leave and never return. The woman returned home, devastated by the encounter. She told her husband, Ezi, that the wealthy young woman they had heard about was none other than their own daughter, Chichi, the child they had abandoned years ago. The family was consumed with guilt and regret, and they sent message after message to Chichi, asking for her forgiveness. But Chichi, still harboring deep wounds, ignored them all. It wasn't until her foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Ifeanyi, gently urged her to consider forgiving her birth family that Chichi finally began to soften. They reminded her of the power of forgiveness and the importance of letting go of the past to move forward. After much reflection, Chichi decided to forgive her family, but she refused to return to them. She had found her true home with the Ifeanyi family and chose to stay with them. In time, Chichi and Chinedu's bond deepened into love, and they eventually got married. Together, they expanded their business empire, helping those in their community and beyond. Despite her painful past, Chichi chose to help her brothers by giving them the means to start their own businesses, allowing them to support themselves and their families. Chichi's story is one of resilience, redemption, and the healing power of forgiveness. Despite the challenges and betrayals she faced, she rose above them, forging a new path for herself. Her journey teaches us that while the past may shape us, it does not have to define us. Through forgiveness and perseverance, we can overcome even the most difficult obstacles and find happiness on our own terms. Chichi's life was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. From a child abandoned and left to fend for herself, she became a successful, respected woman who not only survived, but thrived. Her story reminds us that true strength comes from within and that the power of forgiveness can transform even the darkest of situations into something beautiful.